Updating the top 10 quarterback rankings for the 2025 NFL draft class, Miami quarterback Cam Ward takes the top spot. We're going to explain that and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I'm a senior draft analyst, and thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. You know, I got to kick the intro to Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at The Talent Code. Talk to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champ, man. And the other side to this dynamic duo that we like to call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to start this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. Every listen is greatly appreciated. DP. College football week 3 recap, right? We're going to have our updated QB rankings over here at the Locked On NFL Draft. And then we're going to bring back our segment. We're talking about money makers and bag fumblers, right? Which prospects made themselves some money, elevated up draft boards, then which guys are on a slow decline. And then guess what? You get the guest appearance, right? Week after week from Coach K. From Coach DP, we're hopping into the locker room and we're handing out those game balls. This is going to be an action-packed show. Stay tuned. DP, let's get this thing started.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Guys, if you're new here, every week after college football, we bring our new updated quarterback rankings, our top 10 for the 2025 NFL draft class. At number 1, Cam Ward, Miami quarterback, probably the biggest riser of them all throughout the season. He's played the best ball, I think, in my opinion, of all the quarterbacks. Number 2, Quinn Ewers, looked good this weekend. Did have like a abdominal strain, but I think he's supposed to be okay. After that, Jackson Dart, another guy he hasn't played the best competition, but he's handled business. Got to give credit where credit is due. Quarterback out of Ole Miss. Number 4, we have Shedeur Sanders from Colorado. At number 5, we have Jalen Milroe from Alabama. At number 6, we have Carson Beck out of Georgia. At number 7, we have Garrett Nussmeier out of LSU. At number 8, we have Miller Moss out of USC. At number 9, Drew Aller from Penn State. And number 10, Will Howard from Ohio State. Keith, let's talk about Jalen Milroe real quick. And you highlighted him as a guy that needed to make a statement on Friday, Keith. Did you walk out of that game? It felt like, you know what? Jalen Milroe made the statement I needed him to make.
I'm kind of, you know what? Yeah. And the statement is that he's a dual threat quarterback. I think that's the statement, right? The statement is that when you allow me to run and then I can mix in the pass also, I can be a very productive quarterback because why else did I pick them, DP? Well, pick him as a make a statement player because I was saying, hey, you're going into Wisconsin, right? Big Ten, you're on the road, right? You're on the road at Wisconsin week 2, week 3 of the season. And you didn't play well against USF the week before, right? As far as offensively. So you kind of have to be on upset alert a little bit, right? Like you have to be on upset alert. So I picked him because I'm like, hey, you got to go in there and ball out. And I think that we're going to have to just start changing the idea of potentially what we want Jalen Milroe to be versus what he is. And there's always the room, DP, for development, right? Like we can develop a guy, get him to the next level, things like that. But at his core, what are his A traits, right? It's the same thing with Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson can throw the football, right? But why would we remove his legs from the situation, right? If that's his trait that makes him different from everybody else that's ever played the game of football, is his legs, right? I think the same can be said about Jalen Milroe is that you start getting into the potential franchise quarterback conversations is when he can utilize his legs, DP. So I think the statement that he made was like, hey, I'm a true dual threat quarterback, and that should be A-okay in this time and era of football.
No, 100%, Keith. I mean, in this game, right, he had 13 carries, 76 yards rushing, 2 rushing touchdowns through the air. He was 12 of 17, 71% completion, 196 passing yards, and 3 touchdowns. And I think this is an offense that is still finding their rhythm. I mean, he had the big play. I mean, we talked about it. 17-year-old kid, Ryan Williams, looks like their best receiver right now.
Yeah.
And that connection with him and Milroe, especially down the field, and the explosive plays, right? But he went out there and he was essentially a game changer for them. Being 4 total touchdowns, right? Over 200, close to 300 yards total from scrimmage. Like, just being able to get it done in a multifaceted way. I think for me, Keith, and I'll ask you this before we move into another quarterback. If the draft were today and the team drafted Jalen Milroe, how long would you tell them to sit him and let him learn before throwing him out there?
So I'm gonna say this, that I'm an advocate for sitting quarterbacks regardless. And this may be something that I'm totally against the grain with, right? But I've seen enough case studies when you say the Patrick Mahomes and the Aaron Rodgers, the Jordan Love. I've seen way too many quarterbacks sit down and them go on to have really successful NFL careers and be MVPs and potential Hall of Famers, things like that, right? So I'm kind of advocating for quarterbacks to sit their first year anyway. But for Jalen, I would definitely like, hey, sit him down for you. Let him learn the game. If you're going to put him in a different system, right? Put him in a different system. Let him take off from there, but let him get comfortable and get his feet wet with the NFL game, right? With understanding the playbook and then understanding what traits that he has that'll still be plus level traits in the NFL. So I would sit him for you. I would draft him and then I would sit him.
No, I agree with that. Like, and it's not a situation where it's like, oh, he just like, could he possibly put? Like, yeah, you could dial up a package in an offense like we saw from Lamar Jackson, right? We saw from the Eagles and what they did early on with Jalen Hurts, where you and they still use Jalen Hurts' legs, but they know how to get him going and still be able to, all right, get the efficiency and effectiveness as a passer, but not take away your legs. So I'm with you. I would sit him as well. I would say this, man, like Carson, real quick, Carson Beck in the Georgia Bulldogs, Carson Beck falling to 6 where he's been like 2, that 1-2 range and everything. This is not indicative of him and a poor report on him. This offense just looks like, passing game wise, you're waiting for them to really find themselves and find their rhythm, Keith. And guys like Kobe Young, Oscar Delp, 2 of their biggest playmakers and probably 2 of the most talented playmakers on this offense at the receiver and tight end position. Get the ball to these guys. You got Benjamin Urasek from Stanford that transferred in. Mike Bobo, I think, is their new offensive coordinator. It was their offensive coordinator that after Todd Monken left last year or before last offseason to go to the Baltimore Ravens for 2023 and be their offensive coordinator. Mike Bobo needs to get it figured out because Carson Beck he's looking too much like a game manager than a playmaker and a game changer. And I think he's not saying that he's like a dual threat quarterback or anything, but he's more mobile, which he showed that against Kentucky when they did pressure him. But this offense, this passing game doesn't look explosive, and it's not Carson Beck's fault.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in here, DP. And remember at the very beginning, I compared Carson Beck to who? Derek Carr, right? And what I'm trying to say is that these guys are talented quarterbacks, but they're not scheme-proof players, right? And I think what you're seeing is a difference in approach, right? And I have a couple different thoughts on this Georgia offense, DP. And I think and so what I'm saying is that where he is now, as far as Carson Beck, right, is that they're trying to figure things out, right? But he may not be the guy that's just like, what, it don't even matter. I'm gonna go through for 400 yards regardless, right? But if you put the situation in a good spot, then he's gonna be able to be really productive, right? So, and I think look at Derek Carr, right? He thus far, right? He's playing decent football. They came out week 1, and that's after playing bad the past 2 years, right? And so you're going to get the highs and lows based on what the situation is around them. And I think that's why I somewhat made the comparison of those 2 guys, right? They can be starting NFL quarterbacks that's top 12, top 13 quarterbacks, but they also can be 15, 17, 18, right? From time to time, depending on it. But this is what I kind of see with this Georgia team, DP, is that they almost have an embarrassment of riches and they have so many guys that they're trying to get involved because they know they have so many talented guys that they're not developing a routine and consistency, right? Because it's like, man, if I put Benjamin Urasek in and give the ball to him, then I'm not giving it to Oscar Delp. Then I'm not giving it to my running back. Then I have Kobe Young, right? And I think they're trying, instead of letting it naturally come in the game, they're trying to force plays. It's like, you know how they say you got to dial up the play sheet, and it's like, hey, get this guy involved. I feel like they walk in and their play sheet is 10 plays for Oscar Delp, 10 plays for Benjamin Urich. Like, it just seems forced at this point and not just in the natural confines of an offensive situation. But DP, let's keep this thing going and flowing. And what we have up next, man, is our Money Makers segment. Money Makers and Bag Fumblers. We're going to talk about which NFL draft prospects perform the best and the worst coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Do you want to play PrizePicks alongside comedian Drewski, rapper and podcaster Joe Budden, and MMA champion Sugar Sean O'Malley? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community each and every single week. PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Guys, that's a deal you really don't want to pass up. So download the PrizePicks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Football is finally back, which means it's time to order your favorite game day food, snacks, and drinks on DoorDash without missing a single play. Guys, what is the definition of game day greatness? What's the best piece of advice that I could give you as fellow football fans to reach game day greatness? Have your spread and your food ideas set up before family, friends, or whoever you have coming over even step through the door. The worst thing you could do is have people come over and somebody has to make a store run on the way there before the game or at kickoff or during the game. So being prepared is the definition of game day greatness. DoorDash can help you achieve that. Use promo code LOCKEDFALL24 for 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. Limited offer. Terms apply. Promo is not valid on orders containing alcohol. DoorDash, your door to game day greatness, your door to more. Download the DoorDash app now to order your game day favorites. Must be 21 or older to order alcohol. Drink responsibly. Alcohol only available in select markets. Money makers and bag fumblers, aka stock up and stock down for the 2025 NFL draft class. Keith, I have to go to one of our guys that we asked last year, where are you? Right? You know, where you at last year when he was at Arkansas? Raheem Sanders in a shootout, a game that was a lot of fun. It was kind of controversial with the refs and some.
It was DP, kind of controversial. You being nice with it, right? That was a whole lot of that was 2 pick sixes and an offensive pass interference penalty. That was a wild game. From the very beginning, wild. It was wild.
I was putting my PR hat on for a second. You know, let me get the refs some grace, but no, they did definitely fudge that up. But Raheem Sanders, man, he looked like Rocket Sanders that we saw 2 years ago at Arkansas. 19 carries, 143 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. There was a play where I can't remember. It might have been like a pitch to the outside, to the right, to the boundary. It was closed off by LSU, and then he circled back and reverse field. And not only did he reverse field, but he made multiple guys miss. He was quick-footed. He was making sharp cuts. Like, it was kind of jitterbuggish for a 240-pound, 6'1", 6 foot even running back. He looked like himself. And it's like, you talk about getting back to why people were excited about you after 2022. That was one of those performances where I think he had a long run in this game as well, where he showed that speed. And I think he's bigger. I think he's heavier than he was when he was at Arkansas, because I think he's listed at like 240, 242 or somewhere now. I'm like, hey, brother, if we can get you back down to 230 and really put that jetpack back on your back, we'll feel good about it. But nonetheless, Raheem Rocket Sanders, man, really good performance. Granted, it was a controversial loss, but he made himself some money because in this RB class, you got to stand out, and I think he did that this past week.
Yeah, I'll say this, DP. I'm with you 100%. And so the announcers were talking about it on the game. And so, I wrote up the report on Raheem Sanders, and I noticed the difference from 2022 to 2023 as far as it looked like he put weight on, right? And it affected his contact balance as a running back. It affected his explosiveness in the open field. It affected his elusiveness, all of those different things, right? And so the announcers were talking about how he may have lost weight so I wondered they still have him listed at 240, and then now he's closer to, maybe he's not 220, right? What he was in 2022, right? But maybe he's 230 and he lost 10 pounds, right? And still trying to work on it. And the thing is this, that if I bump into him, and I was thinking this during the game, I'm like, hey, my brother, you get down to 220, you're a top 10 running back in this draft class, right? So keep chipping away at it, because you have the talent, you have the physicality, right? You have the size that NFL teams want in running backs. You just can't get too heavy, right? So I agree with you. He definitely made money because he put himself back on the radar, when I think that he was I think he made all SEC in 2022. So he was you could say he's a top 100, top 150 prospect. But what we seen last year was more of a, hey, this guy 5th, 6th, 7th round. But I think this is the reason why we do this segment, right? Because his stock is definitely on his way up. DP, I'm gonna go with our guy, man. He made some noise, Mr. Luther Burden, DP, Mr. Luther Burden. He had a good game, right? A couple of splash plays. He had social media going crazy, made a couple of highlight plays, and was a big part, I think you can say, right, in how they were able to win that game, because they needed it, right? You're talking about they were at home against Boston College, and that would wind up being a 6-point game when it was all said and done, against a tough, gritty. And we knew Boston College was going to be tough and gritty. They was going to come play a certain level of football, but they needed Luther Burden to make plays. And I think that this was the beginning of him starting to remind people of why I was in not just even the wide receiver 2 or 3 conversation, why I was in the wide receiver 1 conversation at the very beginning of this scouting process, right? So I definitely give my, give you just dues to Luther Burden being able to show up in a big time matchup, because they needed him.
And I spotlighted him, right? My make a statement player of the weekend on Friday, Friday's episode, Keith, getting ready for Saturday. And that was the guy I wanted to see him go out there and showcase himself. And he absolutely did that. Keith, I got to go to one of the more exciting games, another shootout type game, TCU versus UCF. Jack Besh, 9 receptions, 200 yards receiving, and a touchdown. Route running, tempo, patience. Guy that we worked in the slot. He had the touchdown he had was a long ball. It was a kind of a rainbow moon ball throw from the quarterback. But they had a bracket coverage on him. They had a high-low defender coverage over him, and he outran it. Like he outrouted it, he outran it, tracked the ball well, and not only did he caught it at like the 2 or 3, and he started to fall, kept himself up to be able to get into the end zone. This was not a guy that was on my radar coming into that game. It's been Savion Williams, who had, he had himself, like, he was just efficient. I think he had like 3 or 5 catches, like 50 something yards, but he had 2 touchdowns in the red zone where he out there tossing people and stuff like that. But Betch, Jake Betch, man, they needed him big time in this game, and he absolutely showed out, Keith. But I gotta flip to the bad news of this situation.
Yep.
Jalen Daniels again. For Kansas. Like, that was a tough game. And the game started out well for him too, Keith. Like, he had like 2 rushing touchdowns. I said, okay, this is the Jalen Daniels we've been looking for, right? When Kansas played UNLV. And then he ended up going 11 of 23, 48% completions, 150 yards. He had 2 more interceptions. And it was just like, man, like, what is happening? Like, what is going on? Like, he just, like, you saw in that game. I think he also had a fumble in that game as well. I can't remember if he lost it or not, but I know he fumbled the ball. So, yeah, man, for me, like, a guy that's really hurting his stock right now is Kansas quarterback Jalen Daniels. This is a team that had playoff hype and aspirations in the Big 12.
Win the Big 12 type of conversation. Yep.
You come out 2 back-to-back losses that no one expected you to have this season. Friday night against UNLV, last week against Illinois. Yeah, can't have that.
Yeah, DP, my guy, and he didn't play bad. His team won. They did what they needed to do, but from a draft stock making money perspective, right? I'm concerned about where he's going to land, and that's Michigan running back Donovan Edwards, because I am not sure if he's going to end up being the RB1 from here on out, right? And now there's going to be, you had the Blake Corum situation, right, where you kind of played the RB2, and then you had now the situation, and the kids, the young man's name, let me not say kid, the young man's name is Khalil Mullings, right? And he's a guy, 15 carries, 153 yards on the ground, 10-yard average, 2 touchdowns, right? Donovan Edwards still had a good game, 17 carries. So he got more carries, but less yardage, right? 82 yards, 4.8 yards per carry. But it just seems like that Mullings is like picking up the momentum as, hey, we're gonna give this guy significant snaps. He's gonna carve out the role. And it almost seems like we wanted it to be Donovan Edwards because it was his time and seniority. He's been here, paid his just due, but it almost looks like Mullings is, going to be that guy. I think they're trending in different directions, right? Like, and now they're just kind of like at this even plateau. But just for what we wanted Donovan Edwards to be, right, as far as getting the workload, putting up, the 1,200-1,300, because we like the skill set of him, right? It's just that now it's always been a question of carries. What is his carries going to look like? And I'm unsure right now. So that's why I have to say, I don't want to say he fumbled the bag, but it's definitely in question now, as far as what he's going to be able to do.
It's been I remember talking to my guys and said that one of the things that one of the issues with him is that, like, his patience, and that they've been preaching him to be patient in terms of Donovan Edwards. And when you watch Khalil Mullings, you see a patient running back, right? Like, if you're running counter to the outside, GT counter, and you got 2 big 300-pound linemen in front of you leading you to daylight, you got to be patient and follow those guys and now outrun the block, right? And Mullings doesn't do that. He's patient. He runs behind him, and then once he sees daylight, then he explodes and he shows that acceleration and burst. Where Donovan gets a little too ahead of himself, he wants to get out of the backfield, and he might be more suited as an RB2 for an NFL offense that's like that change of pace guy that has the frame and everything of a lead back, but he has the game and the mentality of a RB2. Real quick, Keith, my last guy, sticking with running backs, Ollie Gordon. Like, Ollie Gordon has not looked, out of all the running backs, man, he has back-to-back weeks of 49 yards rushing, back-to-back weeks of 2.9 yards per carry, and like literally against Arkansas, 17 for 49, 2.9. Against Tulsa, 17 for 49, 2.9. Like, I think South Dakota State, he had 104 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. But in this running back class, you cannot have these type of performances, Keith, because it's too many talented ball carriers for you to play this way. And then, like, he's hurting his stock right now. Like, he's hurting himself. Yeah. He's losing money because there's so many talented guys, and there's also guys of his size, right? Jaquindon Jackson at Arkansas looks guy. Like it's same big guy. Raheem Sanders, big guy, right? There's multiple big body backs that are just getting it done. Then you got the smaller guys, Kyle Monungai and Ashton Genty out there cooking every single week, and they have worse quarterback play than he has. So I think this is a situation where you hope that he gets it rectified. But I think now, after running for 1,700 yards, teams are like, yeah, no, like, we're going to load the box. We're going to stop you. And he doesn't negotiate penetration and pressure well. And he also doesn't create much for himself. And it's like, he's better working downhill, but he needs an alley.
DP, Coach DP, let me say that. Coach DP, Coach K, we about to make our appearance, man, and we about to jump into the locker room and hand out our game balls. Coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all of the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. What's a bigger headache than looking through all those tickets to find the best seats at the best price for the best deals? You don't have to do that because of Game Time Picks with Game Time. Also, Game Time has the seat views from every seat in the venue, so before you purchase your ticket, you know what vantage point you and your family and loved ones will have. Also, lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, also job loss protection, and more. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use the redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. Coach K and Coach DP. Keith, like last week, I only got one game ball. I'm not splitting it up this time. Only one. But I talked about Jake Betch in the TCU game for TCU. Kobe Hudson, 6 receptions for UCF, 6 receptions, 145 yards receiving, 2 receiving touchdowns. This was a guy you talked about, Keith, in the summer that you liked a lot when you watched on tape. Teammate of Javon Baker. You know what I mean? Both guys were at Power 5 NCC schools and transferred to UCF. Keith, watching Kobe, he caught, essentially, if I remember correctly, was the actual game-winning touchdown for UCF late in that game. And it was a I don't want to say it was a hospital ball from KJ, but KJ threw it to him, and that safety was headhunting. You know what I mean? But the toughness to take that hit head on and hold on to the football, they had no answer for Kobe Hudson. He was winning over the top. He was winning underneath. He was winning in the middle of the field, short to intermediate. He was tough. He was physical. The route running, everything was there, man. Like, he deserves the game ball. Again, game tying, which led to, I think, the game-winning extra point. Kobe Hudson from UCF versus TCU in the game where I think they scored, 15 to 17 points in the fourth quarter to come back and win that game. That was an exciting game, and Kobe Hudson was definitely the spotlight player for me.
Hey, and that was one of my guys, right, that I scouted him during the summer, and I liked him enough to where I said, why didn't he come out in the draft, right? Because with Javon Baker came out, and people like Javon Baker when he drafted to the New England Patriots, and I'm looking at this guy, and I'm like, very similar skill set, right? And if not, he's a more detailed and nuanced route runner, right? And that's the reason why I like Javon, but Kobe may be a slight step ahead of that. So definitely be on the lookout for Kobe Hudson and what he's able to do. DP, I'm hopping in the locker room. I'm giving the game ball. We talked about this already, man, to Garrett Nussmeier. Just because he's balling right now, and let's be honest, he's the only reason why they're winning these football games. And stepping in first year as a starter, right? All of this pressure, they had the South Carolina DP, and to be completely honest, I had this game as my upset game of the week. It just, everything trended that way. South Carolina coming off of the big win against Kentucky, the momentum, you started to see this defensive line. You're like, okay, they're going to get after in the trenches. LSU can't run a football. They lost their running back, John Emery, fairly young team, going into a hostile environment, right? And listen, they were down 17-0. Refs played a part of it, right? South Carolina quarterback, I think the kid name is Makari Sellers, I believe. That's how you say his name? Lenore Sellers. And he got injured, right? So obviously that slowed a lot of South Carolina's momentum. But I have to give it to Garrett Nussmeier, right? When it was on the line, he had to drive the guys down the field to go up 3 and not just walk away with 3 points, right? Like, they got the touchdown, right? To be able to go up with 2 minutes left in the game, or just under 2 minutes left in the game. That's operating with ice water. South Carolina was a hostile environment. It was hot outside, right? The crowd was getting after it. The students, right? And I think Kirk Herbstreit talked about it. He was like, hey, the students are already close to the hedges because they're ready to storm the field, right? And you have to hold all of that off and get the job done in clutch time performances, and at least you walk back out of there. Because if you don't, DP, you're hopping back on that plane and you're going home. And if you're the LSU Tigers, you're 1-2, and your only win is against Nicholls State. You have a lot of questions about your team, right? If you lose that football game. So shout out to Garrett Nussmeier, got the job done, clutch performer. And there's going to be bigger conversations about who he is as a quarterback and why is his name put in some different situations, because thus far, he's probably had the most difficult resume as far as playing a SC team and a South Carolina team, where some schools, right, they haven't played any top Power 5 programs at all. So definitely balling out and playing really good football. So game ball goes to Garrett Nussmeier.
No, I'm not mad at that at all, Keith, because South Carolina was getting back there. That D line was getting back there. They were pressuring him. but it was the poise and the calmness. He never looked rattled to me at all, even with the interception, right? Like he just kept slinging, he just kept throwing, and he made some. I think he had a couple drops that if they weren't drops, like they probably would have had a little bit more points, and they probably would have been a bigger lead for him because he threw some passes with pressure bearing down on him, and I'm just like, that's a dot, like I'm just like that's a dime. I was like, this, just the ability, and I felt like the play calling. There was a couple moments where they didn't. I felt like they should have just trusted him in some key spots, like I think
it was a
like
weird game, like the play calling, when they like both teams, right? Like when they chose to take chances, when they like South Carolina not running the football as much down the street, like it was just a weird game.
It's like tight play calling and from both sides, man. But Garrett Nussmeier, like I said, he came in 7th on our list right now, and he's been top 5 the past couple of weeks. Just some other guys played better this week. Yeah, I think personally, and just real quick before we close this out, you got UCLA, South Alabama, Mississippi, the next 3 games, and then you go into Arkansas, go into Texas A&M, then you got Bama and at Florida. I think they run these next weeks 4, 5, and 4, 5. They have a week off in 6, 4, 5, and 7. I think they that's 3 straight wins for them. I think they win all 3 of those games, and you put yourself in the position.
That's UCLA,
South Alabama,
and then
Mississippi for the next 3 games.
Ole Miss. Okay. I don't know about the Ole Miss situation because
no. I think is it Ole Miss or is it Mississippi State? Hold on, let me make sure.
I think it's Ole Miss. I think it's Ole Miss. I think it's Ole Miss.
Man, not with that defense. Not with the defense LSU got putting out there right now. Never mind. If that is, because I looked at it, it said Mississippi, so I want to make. Oh, it is Ole Miss. Yeah, no. That's gonna be a shootout. That's gonna be a shootout.
That's gonna be a shootout. He's gonna have.
That's a game that like he goes out there and outduels Jackson Dart. It's like okay,
then now you start the campaign 100% with DP. That wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day, tapping in with you guys, man, through college football, right? Talking about NFL, talking about these NFL draft prospects. The best conversation that there is out there is over here with the dynamic duo over here at Locked On NFL Draft. Listen, man, I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. And you can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube. Wherever you listen to podcasts, get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and everyday shot, for being our everydayers. Come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.